neighborhood from the town of Delphi, Indiana, less than 3,000 residents hoping for this day. Investigators were outside of the home of suspect Richard Allen in mid-October. They were there for many hours, and we have exclusive photos, only on HLN, taken outside of his home that day.
This guy, it just breaks my heart. So many families are affected by this. And I feel bad for his family, his friends. But I'm glad justice is going to be served, I hope.
Photos and speaking to the neighbor. Casey, quickly here, what does that tell you? The neighbors had no idea.
Well, again, hiding in plain sight. Again, it's the roots to the community that can be the best disguise when somebody is guilty of a crime. Particularly with serialists, people who commit a number of crimes. And by definition, when somebody commits a number of crimes like this, they're successful in it. They keep getting away with it by just looking normal, going through their normal routine. You can be very sure that the police are going to consider that perhaps he has done this sort of crime in the past, and maybe that is what this investigation into his house is about.
Thursday, October 13th, they noticed a lot of activity outside his house, a lot of cars that appeared to them to be unmarked law enforcement vehicles, a lot of men not in law enforcement uniforms, but in suits and khaki pants, all arriving at the house just before noon. They asked Richard and his wife to exit the home and to remain outside of the home throughout the day. Richard stood outside. His wife sat in a van. He stood outside that van for several hours. One of the photos shows that we've exclusively obtained. Another photo shows him sitting in the van with his wife with the passenger door open for another several hours. At some point, as it was starting to get dark out, these neighbors noticed that the Carroll County Sheriff's Chief Deputy Tony Liggett arrived. He had a piece of paper with him. He showed it to Richard Allen, and at that point, a tow truck arrived and started taking the car away, one of the cars away, not the one he'd been sitting in, but a car that the neighbors recognized as one that he routinely used. I was able to speak with some of the neighbors of Richard Allen. They've lived near him for several years. They were familiar with him, but didn't know him well. The neighbors also watched through binoculars as officers came out of the house carrying several bundles of cloth, dark cloth, perhaps clothing. A Macy's shopping bag, a shoebox, and a stack of books, small books.
Wow.
And at this point, we don't know what any of that is. Something that I'm sure investigators have spent the last several weeks looking for, whatever evidence perhaps led them to today. And they began a search inside the house and also in the yard using some sort of a device, perhaps like a metal detector or something like that, to search a flower bed and also an area around a shed. They did dig around the shed, some small areas. They took a lot of photos in the shed. The neighbors said that they had known him for several years, and he was basically, there was nothing special about him. He lived a quiet life with his wife and didn't have loud parties, didn't have a lot of people over. They spoke to them on occasion, but not often, and they're quite unnerved by these developments.
Yeah,
Susan?
that is what is so baffling, and you were able, as you mentioned, to speak to the neighbors and get those pictures, and the neighbors through binoculars thinking, who is this? We didn't even know our neighbor, and you mentioned that shed in the back.
Yes. And that's right. And they said that, they'd never in their lives ever seen that type of activity in their neighborhood or anywhere else that they've ever lived. It was a lot of vehicles, perhaps 8 to 12 vehicles they saw. One of them did appear to be a crime scene type white utility van, and it took 12 hours all told, many of those hours seemingly waiting for a search warrant.
But we don't know if he took souvenirs from Abby and Libby. We don't know exactly what they're looking for, but it would seem that what they found there is responsible for his arrest on Friday.
Denise's daughter, Cynthia, was friends with Abby and Libby, and she talked about kind of learning about this arrest. Here's what she had to say.
When I started to piece together who, and I saw his picture, and I had just talked to him a week before, I felt disgusted. I thought I was going to throw up. It was horrifying. And how close he lives to my house. All his neighbors that are good friends of mine. He was a dog sitter for one of my good friends. They had no idea. There's like a handful of stores in Delphi. He works at CVS. Everybody goes to CVS.
So, you can hear the trauma in her voice, and I think that it's important to remember there was obviously a trauma associated with this crime, and now there's a trauma for the acceptance that there's an arrest. And so I think this town is really doing the best that they can to learn that they now are taking kind of a left turn, and this is moving into a new phase.
And Barb, what was it like being in the room there in the aftermath of what you heard?
Susan, one of the things I noticed was that this press conference was not a celebration, even though they're announcing an arrest, something people have been waiting for. Superintendent Carter said himself during the press conference.